Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Don from 1A Auto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And the next time you need a part for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to replace the one of the front wheel drive axle actuators. Usually if your vehicle seems to be stuck in four-wheel drive or it's making a lot of humming noises, what you can do is, with the car running, you jack up the front wheels, and with the car running you turn the front wheels and the front drive shaft still turns, that's a good indication that these axle actuators, and also possibly your solenoid that's up behind your battery, are stuck. And common problem on these trucks. You'll need new actuators from 1AAuto.com, jack and jack stands, a pry bar, pliers, 8, 13, 24, and 30 millimeter sockets, ratchets and breaker bar pipe for some extra leverage, and a 12 millimeter 12-point socket and ratchet. And in the video we show you the right hand or passenger side, the left hand or driver side is the same procedure. Start out, raise and support the vehicle securely, and then remove your center cap.
And we're going to remove the cap on the end of the hub. And with a 13 millimeter socket, I'm going to remove the nut on the end of the axle. Where the end of your CV joint meets the solid axle, there's going to be 6 12.12 millimeter bolts. So I'm using a 12-point socket to remove those.
Okay, and we're just gonna do some fast forwarding here, and you can basically hold on to the tire, have an assistant, or you could have somebody hold the brakes for the vehicle and loosen up those bolts and remove them.
I'm going to remove the bolt with a 30 millimeter socket that holds in the lower part of the strut assembly so that we can get more room to pull the CV shaft out.
And I'm going to fast forward here as we remove that nut and bolt. Once you get the nut loosened up, you can tap it with a hammer a few times, make sure that the bolt is loose and will come out.
I'm going to use a pry bar and pry out the lower end of the strut assembly from the lower control arm. While I was prying on the lower part of the strut assembly, I was able to pull the CV shaft past this. I'm going to pull the shaft out.
Okay, we'll just speed it up here. Work the axle out, and then you actually have to work the lower strut mount out. We'll use a pry bar and get that moved out of the way, and then the axle comes right out.
There are 3 8 millimeter bolts that hold it on.
We'll fast forward here as we remove those 8 millimeter bolts.
Now, using a flat blade screwdriver, I'm going to pry off the actuator. And I'm going to disconnect the vacuum hoses. So here we have the old part, and here's our new replacement part from 1A Auto, identical. You can see here that when you try to apply pressure to the back of this, where it would engage and disengage the all-wheel drive, or the four-wheel drive, it doesn't work, whereas our new one is nice and fluid. And I'm going to start by connecting the vacuum hoses. Placing it back inside, reinstalling the 8mm bolts.
And we'll fast forward here again as we reinstall those bolts. We always put the bolts in first, make sure they can kind of start by hand, make sure all three of them start in, and then tighten them up.
Sliding the CV joint back into place. Now with the wheel all the way turned out, I'm going to go ahead and re-secure where the strut goes into the lower control arm.
And once you get that back in place, use the bolt, or you can also use a screwdriver or a line-up tool. Get the hole to line up, get the bolt through, put the nut on the back side, and then tighten it up. And you want to tighten that bolt up to about 95 to 100 foot-pounds.
And I'm going to line up the holes on the CV shaft with the solid axle and reinstall the 12mm 12-point bolts.
Okay, and once again we'll fast forward here. Reinstall the bolts first by hand. Make sure they're turning in there and you're not cross-starting any of the bolts. And then tighten them up kind of preliminarily. And then what you want to do is kind of use a cross pattern. Tighten one up, then tighten, and you want to tighten them to about 25 foot-pounds. Tighten one up, then go to the opposite one, tighten that one up, and just kind of keep with that pattern until they're all tight.
Reinstalling the 13mm nut on the end of the axle, CV shaft. Reinstall the cap. And align your center hub cover, the pin here and the hole there.
We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.1aauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.